Aloha and welcome to The Art of Life. I'm your host, Willow Chang. We broadcast every Friday from 2 to 3 p.m. here at Pioneer Plaza. And this show is basically to do the show that we had hoped to have 2 weeks ago, and that was questions that were fielded to us via our viewers and Facebook friends and Facebook Ohana. Unfortunately, on that day we had some major technical difficulties, so what I wanted to do is address some of these questions in appreciation to your really great insights and inquiries. So let's get right to the top here. I'm going to also identify those people so you know whose question is from who. Viewer Marilyn Maya Mendoza, aloha, says, how has world travel affected your opinions, inspirations, and life goals? My goodness, I will first have to say that I have two answers to that question. Prior to actually having the luxury and the opportunity to travel as I have as an adult, when I was younger, I didn't. And so my first type of world travel was really that of the imagination, and also through educational shows and programs, whether it was Nova or National Geographic or Cosmos, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, traveling with the imagination and reading and learning about other cultures. I loved encyclopedias and things like that. And it was really reassuring to know that there was a world outside of Hawaii. As much as I love Hawaii, sometimes we can be small or myopic or provincial, and I really wanted to make sure that I could be perhaps a citizen of the world. And my parents helped ensure that as well with the activities that they had me do, hula and Chinese school and going to cultural fairs and things like that. When I was able to travel a little more, my first trip was actually to the Big Island in 4th grade. And I think almost all kids in Hawaii at that point in time would go, and you would see the petroglyphs, and you would go to the City of Refuge and whatnot. And it was an attempt to instill an appreciation and understanding of Hawaiian culture. And this is all prior to what I refer to as the cultural renaissance that's going on right now in Hawaii. And that was really cool to be on the plane and see something different. I then later went to the continental U.S. I went to the East Coast and I went to California. And that was pretty mind-blowing to see those two extremes and to compare them and contrast them with what we have here in Hawaii. And at that point in time, it was still prevalent that ideas, trends, fads, even mindsets were a little slower here in the island. It took a while to move across with those things. So everything in contrast seemed a lot more fast-paced than what was present in Hawaii in the late 80s. As an adult now, I've been able to go to places as far-fetched as Austria or Switzerland multiple times. I'm a repeat offender there. Germany, Tunisia, Egypt, Istanbul, and even Syria. And it's fascinating because you're able to see what elements are truly universal or part of the human family. We all cry, we all bleed the same color, we all enjoy the souk or the shopping center, places of worship, things of beauty. Although those might be defined differently in each place, I think there's elements to the human experience that are very universal. And I take with those experiences home and I try to share them, this greater idea of humanity, with my students and the people that I meet. And it's actually quite a well of inspiration for me as an artist and as a person. So I would always recommend people to take that vacation, even if it's vacationing in your hometown, do something different because it stimulates your mind and your soul in ways that are unexpected. I could do a whole show just on that topic, but we got to keep it moving on here. Thank you for your question. Colin Correa, a local boy who now lives in New York City, and his is a long question, which could also be a whole show. He writes, what do you think about the rate that Honolulu is growing, and is the current growth sustainable? So he has two questions. We're going to answer them in order. For those of you who follow me on Facebook, you'll probably know that I am very much imbued and steeped in saudade, a feeling of longing or sadness of things of the past or things that can no longer be. I will admit that. I have a fan of nostalgia. I also believe in things that are deemed traditional, cultural traditions that give identity and purpose to a community. That's not to say that I'm against things that are new or things that are considered progress or that are considered progressive. I think what's really essential is always establishing a balance between those, what might seem like polar opposites, or those elements of duality. Honolulu, being a city on an island, as all of the islands are islands, that sounded very stoner there. We have limited resources. That is not the mindset of scarcity. That is simply a reality. We have certain constructs and confines that we have to work within the parameters of being on an island, whether that's our food sources, how we use our land, our open spaces, how we deal with traffic, how we deal with education, housing, and all of those types of things. That being said, it's always good to have a plan in mind. I think Hawaii has probably had a very consistent pattern of just being piecemeal and just being a patchwork, crazy quilt existence of building something when there was space. A really great living example of this is if you go to the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Look at that campus. It's like they just put up portable classrooms, they just build things when there's an open space, they don't maintain the things that they already have, and that unfortunately has been a pattern for Hawaii's growth for many, many years and many generations that precede my existence. That being said, I think the solution cannot possibly be building 22 condos in a very small, dense area like Kaka'ako, perhaps ruining, or at the very least obscuring, the views of the mountain, the ocean, changing the traffic plans. I know everyone here is rooting for rail. I'm not a fan, and that's another show for another topic. The fact that the sewer systems have not really been contended with properly, that the infrastructure hasn't been dealt with properly, that the roads are really pockmarked and terrible, and we take the cheapest route possible to just patch them up with tar and blacktop, is an abomination. We don't have any schools. They're intending to have young families live there. We don't have any schools in that area other than McKinley. There are no middle schools and no elementary schools, and aside from Foodland, there are no other supermarkets in the area. I think that there's a lot of money to be made, and I think it's very short-sighted. The second question that Colin asked is, if one uses Kaka'ako as a barometer, which I just have, it seems the current growth is not sustainable and will tax the environment and infrastructure. I think if we're really frank about that, everybody knows that that's a reality. That doesn't mean that you have to be for or against it. It's just a logical conclusion. We really need to slow down and be mindful and look at this and see who benefits and how they benefit before we just pave over everything and then we're kind of painted ourselves into a corner or paved ourselves into a corner. We'll bring on some guests for this topic because I know that we can give you some hard facts and figures if that's what you're looking for. Johnny Austin has sent in a wonderful series of questions which I have written to him and asked him to be a guest on the show. Fingers crossed, if he cannot, we are going to bring some people who I would consider experts on the topic because they're all concerning the illegal annexation of Hawaii and acknowledging that legal standing. I am not an expert in this arena, and I don't think that the time given in this episode will give us the respectful means to discuss that. So we're going to put a little check mark on that and come back to annexation and sovereignty issues, because that could be several shows unto itself. But it's something to really consider. If you're unfamiliar with this, there's information out there on the internet about it, about the overthrow in 1893. Jessica Houston writes in, what made you decide to become a singer, dancer, dance teacher, and what inspires you? This kind of became the Willow Chang show, didn't it? I'm one of those people where I started all of those things, with the exception of being a dance teacher, at a very young age. I'm very grateful that I let my freak flag fly, and I wasn't really concerned as much if other people thought it was strange. I already knew that they did, and it didn't really bother me. In a lot of social settings, being a person of mixed background, I already knew it wasn't going to fit in, so I figured it was moot. Why bother trying to fit a round peg into a square shape? It's not going to happen. Singing and dancing, I think, are such an extension of the human experience, and I honestly believe that everybody can sing and dance. Now, everyone literally can sing and dance. This is not passing judgment on your abilities or the quality, which is always subjective. So if you think about it, everybody can sing and everybody can dance, whether you're coordinated or whether you can sing on pitch, whether you have low vocal flexibility or music reading skills, or you can remember choreography. Those are other skill sets that come from studying or training in those disciplines. But the reality is that everybody can sing and dance. In my universe, everyone sings and dances. We're all in a musical because they provide us windows to the sacred. There are portals to use the body as the vessel for vibrational frequencies, connection to our ancestors and our elders, ways of processing emotional issues and things that we're contending with, whether it's happiness or grief, sadness or joy, celebrating seasons, telling stories. They serve a much more important purpose than just the ego. It's much more than the ego. Singing and dancing can take you in a much deeper place if that's your intention. Clearly, when I went to Egypt to perform and work as a professional, both singer and dancer, that was kind of when the light bulb went on, and I thought, you know what, I can actually do this and pursue this not only as my passion, but as my profession. And I'm very grateful to do that. I went to school and I, did all those things that you do, and I got my degree actually in dance and in music. But I knew I wouldn't be an accountant. Let's just put it that way. What inspires me? I think if you have a chance to go back and look at some of the back issues that are up on the Art of Life page on Facebook, I have quite a few shows that feature things that inspire me involving sacred practice, obviously photography, writing, and poetry. This show inspires me. The opportunity to share things and to interview people who I think are really committed to their craft is a continual source of inspiration, and I'm really grateful for this window and opportunity to delve into that on a weekly basis. Moving right along. Well, Colin came back for seconds. He writes, like the recent debate in New Zealand regarding the national flag, should the Hawaii state legislature vote on developing a new state flag that is more quote-unquote Hawaiian in color and motif? That is a really good question, and now I regret that I didn't provide a graphic for you folks. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the flag that represents the state of Hawaii, it looks very similar to, or has elements of, the Union Jack in the far left corner, and then it has stripes, just as our flag has stripes in the state of, the United States of America. So it's almost like a melding of these two different types of motifs or flags to create the state of Hawaii. One of the things I think we have to consider is you always have to look at the lenses of what is the cultural milieu of when these elements or dynamics were present and were created. So that flag is clearly a product of its time period, of when there were not only the missionaries and kind of like a cultural colonization of Hawaii, and there were different factors involved in terms of the perception that things that were Western were better, and what have you. We could create a new flag. I mean, there's always the option, but then it's about what type of symbology represents Hawaii best. If we look at the University of Hawaii as an example of what happens when bureaucracy gets into design and elements of identity, the fact that our sports teams have gone from being called the Rainbows to the Warriors, back to the Rainbows, and then even the stores that sell the merchandise went from the Rainbow Teak now to the H store. I think this was in the paper yesterday. Our logo went from a rainbow that said U and H at the end of it to an angry H that I guess is supposed to look like kappa or tapa, that's green, black, and silver, back to the rainbow. I'm not really sure if I have a great deal of faith in the process. When we had to vote on our quarter, we ended up having the quarter with King Kamehameha and the Hawaiian Islands depicted. I think a surfer and a hula girl were the other contenders. Some people might have issue with that because there's a violent history associated with the legacy of Kamehameha. I'm not really sure what the right answer is. I think it's worthy of looking into it, but I don't think there's a simple answer. So I'm kind of on the fence. I'm not sure if history really proves that we've had a lot of success in that arena. Doesn't mean it isn't worth trying. Christian Amr says, who has the best mac salad? Well, for those viewers out there who are unaware of this, people in Hawaii, we'll say local folk, have this affinity for mac salad, macaroni salad. Yes, that strange, heinous creation that's made with mass quantities of mayonnaise. I'm not a fan of mayonnaise. I'm also allergic to eggs, so I avoid the stuff like the plague. Therefore, I'm probably someone not good to ask who makes the best mac salad. However, I could say in terms of the best mac and cheese, hands down, 12th Avenue Grill. I think they put a whole stick of butter in there. It's phenomenal and tasty. But I couldn't tell you who has the best mac salad. My apologies. Colin Korea types in, why stop at just the mac salad? These are my friends, I love them. Which restaurant or food truck serves the best plate lunch in Hawaii? Foodies want to know. You know what? We might have to have a panel just about that topic. So here it is. I'm a local girl, born and raised, and I honestly am not really into, this is sacrilege, I'm not really into plate lunch. I could never quite understand why you needed to have 2 scoops of rice and mac salad and then a slab of meat. And maybe if you're lucky, tossed salad, which is usually a white, not even a green lettuce, and then they throw something horrendous like a Thousand Island dressing on it. It scares me. All of it scares me. There's been many approaches to upgrade the plate lunch, so I know that you can find different things with furikake spread on top and different kinds of meat and things that are tofu and what have you, and maybe we need to have a discussion about that. However, I can say that I do like Korean food, so if it's a plate lunch with Korean food, I could be down with that. But the mac salad and the rice, that's just so bad for your blood sugar, for your insulin, if you're diabetic. I mean, that's the short road to being a diabetic. Why are there 2 or 3 servings of starch on the plate? This is something to consider. And you know, a lot of people have cited the plate lunch as one of the things that's kind of like the gateway drug to a whole litany of health-related issues. I know it's like a total Debbie Downer thing to say, but considering that the deep dark secret is that we have a lot of these health concerns and we have extremely high diabetes here in Hawaii, it's something we should be a little more aware and think about. Sorry, I went there. Actually, I'm not sorry. We need to talk about these things. Okay, Kristen writes back again and says, Willow, as far as culture and historic relevance, what 5 places on Oahu do you recommend for visitors? Oh, my goodness. These are all prompts for shows within a show. You know, I think what you have to keep in mind is that every person comes to Hawaii for a different reason or different purpose. And the reason why I think people can return to Hawaii repeatedly is either they're going to go to those same places over and over again, or they have the option to see things that are totally different. This is why when I have guests, I try to find out where are their personal leanings. Are they into outdoor activities? Do they like historical things? Are they into more like cultural/ethnic things? Are they into music and dance and what have you? So asking those kind of questions would kind of narrow it down. I would have to say, in no particular order, Gosh, this is such a hard one to answer. I'm going to say Iolani Palace, not in any particular order, because the fact that Hawaii is the only state in the nation that has its own palace because of our history with the Hawaiian royalty and the ali'i, I think it's important for people to see that, and I think it also really puts it into perspective the advances and the elegance and the sophistication that was present in Hawaii at that point in time. One of the things that I learned that really still to this day fascinates me is that Iolani Palace had electricity before the White House did. Also, because there's been some recent incidents of vandalism at Iolani Palace, I feel like it could be an impetus to go and see the palace with all of the efforts they've made to do restorative things before other people might take cue and do some other acts of vandalism towards the palace. I know that sounds kind of Debbie Downer, but these are things to consider. I would encourage people to go on a hike that's deemed safe, not that stuff that you see in Lonely Planet, because a lot of those hikes are not sanctioned, they're not safe, and I don't like the fact that people go off the trail and then our fire and rescue people have to go and save them at the cost to the taxpayer. Yes, I went there, but you know, it's like if you're going to be responsible when you're visiting a place, you need to be mindful about what's appropriate. Don't go to Stairway to Heaven or these places that you're not supposed to go to. You know, it's like there's a reason. You have to be pono about this. Go to the trails and stay on the trails. Don't pick things. Don't destroy things. Be mindful of the neighbors that have their houses close to the trail, but enjoy the beauty that Hawaii has to offer, and always leave the place more immaculate than when you saw it. So that means if you see someone else's trash, even though it's not your trash, pick up the trash. Is it going to kill you? It doesn't kill me. I do it all the time. Let's see. We have some wonderful architecture in Hawaii. I would encourage people to just walk through Chinatown and downtown, because in addition to the things that are socially relevant, I think when you see some of the things that are unpleasant about Hawaii, you can hopefully write a letter and raise awareness about that. I think it's good to see a place for its warts and all. Cultural and historical relevance. I'm a fan of Wa'ahila Ridge, which is St. Louis Heights, because when you go up there, it doesn't necessarily feel like Hawaii. I know that's a strange thing to say, but with all of those pine trees up there, the Norfolk pines, and it's very cool and it's very quiet and you can hear birds. It's beautiful. I would encourage people to go to the North Shore, but if you can, maybe take a bus instead of clogging up the traffic. I mean, I am a fan of our lovely little museum, the Honolulu Museum of Art, aka Honolulu Academy of Arts. They have a beautiful encyclopedic collection of artwork that never fails to inspire, and it's a beautiful home, the home of Anna Rice Cook. And in addition to that, to see Doris Duke's Shangri-La, which is at Black Point. I used to be a docent or interpretive guide there, and it's really amazing to see the elements of 1930s Art Deco architecture paired with Spanish Morisco influences and things from the Middle East and India and the Mughal style, all integrated there in that breathtaking view and vista. There's many, many more. I can't limit it to 5, but I do have more questions, so we'll come back to that. I need to spend a little more time thinking about it. Vanny John, this is from Vanny. She said, I missed this during my post-work nap, but I'm going to ask anyway because I'm so curious. Well, so am I. My question is multifold. When you were a child, what did you want to be when you grew up, and how did you become the Renaissance woman you are today? Vanny is a student of mine, and she's an awesome lady. We're both Sarah Lawrence grads, so woot woot. Actually, I'm not a grad. I'm just a semi-alum. You have such an interesting blend of talent and pursuits, you can't really major in Renaissancing. So who inspired and supported you, and how did you set your own unique path? Well, that could be a whole bunch of shows, but I'm going to try to keep it brief. What did I want to be when I grew up? you know, it's interesting because I came across an old journal, and these were prompts that we had to have at school, and they asked us what we wanted to be when we were grown up. And I wrote down singer, dancer, fashion designer, and there might have been one other hyphenate there. And when I came across this as an adult, because I'm a mild hoarder, I saw this and I thought, well, that's kind of cool. I'm actually all of those things. I always knew that I wanted to go into the arts. And I feel like I was surrounded by a lot of artistic influences. My parents were creatively inclined, and all of the people that I aspired to be like, whether it was Annie Lennox or Ansel Adams or Mr. Rogers was very creative, or Tina Chow, the model turned fashion designer. All of these people were always creative. Josephine Baker. And they always did multiple things. They were never limited to just one thing. Even Jim Henson, watching The Muppets or watching Sesame Street, that's like just a symphony of daily creativity coming in through the house. So it didn't seem odd or strange or far removed or weird. Let's see. What inspired me? What supported me? You know, I think it really is just a matter of like what you relate to. There are going to be times on this path that it can be very lonely. Being an artist can be a very lonely pursuit because you can fool yourself into thinking you have a sense of community. But the artistic process can also be a very singular one, a very individual one, especially if you're involved in writing or poetry. If you go to seek community like elbow groups and do things in the showcase, yes, it's interactive, but that pursuit of like trying to paint, when you're painting, when you're sewing, when you're creating, it can be a very solo pursuit. And I actually enjoy that time. I think it's very meditative and reflective because I do performing arts and because I teach, it also gives me an opportunity to be interactive with people and to share. But I always think of that as the balance. It's like you take the time to incubate an idea and to marinate it and to work on it, to hone your craft, and then when it's made known that it's time to share that, or you have a purpose or a goal or something to actually say or share, then you go about that. I'm not sure if I answered that question, but definitely trying here. Marilyn Maya Mendoza, she came back for seconds here. She says, another question, what does dance mean to you and how has it affected your life? It affects me in everything I do, everything from how you brush your hair or brush your teeth or roll out of bed, because I want my instrument, which is the body, to be at its optimum. It affects everything I do, from what I eat, the clothes that I wear, how close do I want my clothes to fit to the body. You feel more confidence, awareness, or you want things that are jersey because they can move. You think about the types of things you do to maintain your body, whether that's a yoga practice or studying Pilates or reading dance trade publications or watching YouTube videos or going to concerts. I don't think of it as something that is separated. So that's one of the themes you're going to find throughout the show of The Art of Life, is the way to integrate that whole process into a daily, habitual practice of learning, of sharing, of connection. What does it mean to me? Dance is really about life and ultimately improvisation, which is the ability to land on your feet like a cat and to be of the moment. To be in that flow, to be in that moment of connected to the chi is essential, and it's something I think that everyone, whether they're aware of it or not, aspires to. Whether that's you're surfing or you're snorkeling or you're like, wow, it was amazing, I was on the dance floor and I was just dancing, it just came to me. That's all about finding that place of being in the flow, right? So dance really helps you with that. Jeffrey Shaw writes, is art in the most inclusive sense possible so omnipresent that most don't appreciate how much it defines us as people? I would say yes. And so from the cup of coffee, your coffee cup and the design, wow, the art of life. The cup of coffee that you're drinking, the car that you're driving, when you're redoing your bathroom, the toilet that you select, or the toilet paper roll, or the hairbrush that you buy, or this little cake and they decide to put a little sticker here with three hearts and it says for you, or this little scotch tape that says, "There is a happy time with you." Someone made this tape and someone decided to put this little joyful piece of tape. They could have put a regular piece of tape, or you could have a matte piece of tape, or you could have a clear cellophane piece of tape. You think that these things don't matter, but they actually do, and they all involve design, art, and aesthetics. Now, they're not always necessarily all one and the same, but they all involve art to some degree. So yes, I do think we take it for granted. We have 2 more questions which we may not have time for, which means we'll have to have another show. Evan Tector's question I'm going to answer later, but I want you to hear what it is so you can think about this at home. Innovation for the life of arts. Quote, "For the past 28 years, Griton," pardon me, I might have mispronounced that, "has not paid a dime to the Tax Administration Service, SAT, the Mexican equivalent of the IRS. But he is no criminal. In fact, a country that has lost an estimated $872 billion money to laundering and tax evasion over the past 4 decades. Griton is in good standing with the law. Like more than 700 artists across Mexico, he takes part in Pago en Especie, payment in kind program, the only one of its type in the world that allows artists to pay federal income taxes with their own artwork." This was in the Atlantic. This is something that I think needs to be discussed and investigated on another show, but I'm very intrigued by this. I'm not sure if I could pay taxes with a belly dance per se, but I'm certainly intrigued at this concept. And last but not least, Maggie, this question was sent in after we started to try to tape the show, and I think we're going to have to answer this later. But Maggie wrote, "You'd mentioned maybe running for political office, and we have both posted dissatisfaction with many current policies, implementation of said policies. She wants to know more about myself in an active role politically and what are the things you would address and change." I will answer that at a later date because unfortunately we've run out of time. However, I'd like to thank all of the viewers who submitted questions, and maybe we'll do this once every 3 or 4 months and have this question answer session. This is The Art of Life. I'm your host, Willow Chang Alion, and we'll see you on Friday at 2 o'clock. Aloha.